What's going on, everybody? Yes, it's Thursday morning. Thursday, 11:04 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's Thursday, May the 28th, 2020. My name's Dave McRae, coming to you live from the VoiceMann Studios in Toronto, Canada. How's everybody hanging in? Are you hanging in wherever you are around the world? Hey, yeah, folks, welcome to episode 61 of McRae Live. Thank you for joining me, whether you are joining me live, whether you're joining me after the fact, whether you don't give a frog's fat ass about today's topic. I don't do it for the views, people. I don't do it for the views. I want to talk about what I want to talk about, what I am passionate about, or what I find interesting, or what I think you guys might find interesting, or, whatever the case is. Maybe I'll have a show where I play tiddlywinks with my butt cheeks. Maybe that's, or pickup sticks with my butt cheeks. Tiddlywinks. Pickup sticks, John Candy, planes, trades, and automobiles, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, this is episode 61. It's hard to believe we're already up to 61 episodes. I didn't know where the show was going to go when I decided to do it in January of this past year. Well, I had decided that I was going to move in that direction over the Christmas holidays, actually. And I didn't know how it was going to go. I didn't know if I would be able to commit to it. In some sort of ironic way, I've been able to commit to it maybe better than I would have because of COVID-19, because things are sort of on the down low, and, everybody, whether you work in, the entertainment industry, or whether you work in, commerce, or, I don't know, management, or, whatever or retail, restaurant, things have taken a hit. So I have found myself that over these last few months, I actually do have time to be able to do these shows. Not that I wouldn't have had time before, but my goal was every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 11 a.m., right? But that was kind of like, we'll see how that goes, because I might have a voiceover session will have to do on a Thursday at 9 a.m., so I'd have to push the show to later in the day or to a completely different day. But, because of COVID, things are sort of, quiet, not completely silent, but quieter than they normally would be for obvious reasons. But anyway, so today's topic, today I want to talk about, this is not a show that's going to get a lot of views because nobody gives a fuck, but I find it interesting, and I always like sort of sharing bits and pieces about me and about my life, and I get asked about it. And sometimes I like to just jump online and do these kinds of shows and give you some insight into my life and sort of, how I got to where I am, and sort of maybe what my goals are, from here on out. I just turned 41 on Sunday. It's crazy to think, but I did. Of course, Tony Michael, Two Dudes and Some Bullshit, he turns 41 tomorrow, because today's the 28th, so he turns 41 tomorrow. Anyway, so today's topic is my professional journey from film school to voiceover. So that's what I wanted to talk about and kind of give you some insight into how I got here and my journey through the entertainment industry, but through a very specific part of the entertainment industry, which is primarily voiceover, right? Anyway, so like many of you who may be watching, when I was a young boy growing up, I was very, very much into movies, right? I would watch movies on repeat all the time. My sister Jill, my older sister Jill, would often say that we never worried about renting you movies in the 80s because we knew that we would always, or we never worried that you would watch them because you did. Over and over. We always got our money's worth and then some. I was the kind of kid back in the early to mid 80s that I would be watching movies on repeat. Like as soon as the movie was done, I would rewind it and watch it again. Or I would be playing with my toys, but it would be on in the background. And then sometimes, actually more than sometimes, we would, it would be time to take the movie back, right? Like you'd have it for a couple of days and you'd have to take the movie back. And I would ask my mom or my older sister, I'd be like, can we renew it? Because I want to watch it again. And like my mom and my sister would be like, what do you want to renew it again? I don't like, you just watched it 500 times. You really want to? Yeah. Yep. I was that kind of kid. So I was always into movies. I loved movies, but I also loved, even from a very young age, and I don't know why really, but I didn't just have a fascination with the movie and the stories and, the characters, but I was very inquisitive and I wanted to know, how things were made and how things were done. Even at a very young age, I had that level of interest. Now, obviously, I was very young and I didn't understand how it all worked, but I found those things cool and I wanted to know how they did that. How did they do that? What made them decide to do that? I was thinking these things at like 7, 8, 6. Now, when I was a young boy, I always used my humor to make friends. I was a class clown, right from maybe not elementary school per se. Certainly when I moved a couple of times because in 1989, I moved away from the Toronto area to Ottawa, which is about 4.5 hours east of here. Ottawa is our nation's capital, for those of you that don't know. It's like, your Washington, D.C. in the U.S. And I moved there to live with my dad and my stepmom and my younger half-sister, and I went to school there. And I think it was the late 80s there, where I really used my personality and my humor to make people laugh, to make friends. And it worked. It also got me into some trouble and things like that. But I was always a very extroverted, type of kid, right? I was a ham. I was a caution, as my mother would say. Oh, David, you're such a caution. I was always into making people laugh, and I was always into, performing, and I was charismatic and all that kind of jazz. And so, but my love of movies never waned. I mean, it was always there. But then I really got into the acting side of it. Like I wanted to act in movies and in films and be on stage and things like that. And I was the first into the drama class and the last to leave. And, I was really into that kind of thing. That's the kind of kid I was. So if you knew kids like that in school, that was the kind of kid I was. If you were a kid like that growing up, I was like you. From a very young age, and I come from that kind of family. I mean, I posted a video not too long ago on here of my dad. My dad, of course, passed away in 2011. So did my mother. They had been divorced for 35 years. So funny enough, they died the same year, but two completely different reasons. And I mention that because sometimes people think when I say my parents died the same year, naturally they might assume, oh, did they both die in a car accident? Did one die of a broken heart? Or, something like that, right? It's like, no, actually, no, it was, they had been divorced. They had always remained close because they had 4 kids together. So it wasn't like a toxic relationship or anything like that. But certainly they hadn't been together for a long time. And so I just wanted to say that. But I come from that kind of family. I'm a very extroverted, loud family. You get everybody together and everybody's, I mean, look at me. You can imagine like 9 of me all in, a room together, all that kind of jazz, right? So naturally that was in my school life. You know what I mean? I was always a ham, always a class clown, always getting into trouble. David, you know what I mean? Always that kind of stuff. I wasn't particularly a great student, but I wasn't a bad student. I was an average student at best, C's and B's. Not because I couldn't get A's, but just because I didn't try hard enough. I was one of those guys that probably if I applied myself and committed myself, I probably would have done better. In high school especially, I didn't do bad, but I would have done better. I might have been able to get on like the honor roll, or something like that, right? If I had actually applied myself. But I didn't because I always knew what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to be a part of, what now, of course, we call the entertainment industry, but I mean, and it was always called that. But of course, when you're in high school, it's just, I want to be part of movies. You know, I want to make movies. I want to be in movies. You know, I want to act. I want to perform. I want to host. I don't know. You know, it's just, I have to do something that is utilizing my talents and my strengths, right? We all have talents and strengths, right? Some people are just whizzes at whatever. And you hope that they use that whatever in whatever they do, right? Everybody's got their strengths. Everybody has their weaknesses. And I was always good at that kind of thing, whether it's hosting or performing or acting or, you know, getting behind the camera and making movies and, you know, visualizing shit and trying to bring things to life. And I was that kid, right? I was that kind of kid. So I always knew I wanted to be that, but and I think that part of maybe was the reason why in high school, on maybe even a subconscious level, I didn't try as hard because I always knew what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. I knew I didn't want to be I do often say that if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I would have loved to have been a police officer. I think I would have made a good police officer. And my girlfriend often says, yeah, I think you would have too, because you're a good communicator. You're good with people. You know what I mean? And in that respect, I think I would have been good. I would have been a good communicator with people, you know, getting to the bottom of shit. You know what I mean? I think I would have been a good cop. And I think I might have even been a pretty good detective. I'm pretty good on those real life crime shows that I watch. But anyway, I often say that. But that aside, I always knew I wanted to be that kind of guy. When I was in junior high school, that's where I met my best friend, still to this day, Bruce. We met in September of 1992. It was my 7th grade year. It should have been my 8th grade year, but I failed grade 4. So I was held back a year. So Bruce is a year young. Most of my friends that I grew up with are a year younger than me because I had failed grade 4, right? So you know what I mean? So Bruce is a year younger than me. He just turned 40 in February. But anyway, so I met him that year, my 7th grade year. We became the best. I don't know. It's just something that just, you know, the chemistry, right? There's just something there. We became really good friends. But ironically, and Bruce is an artist. He's a visual artist. He's a classically trained visual artist. So he's just a great drawer and painter. And he's done all sorts of storyboards and concept art and things like that for, like, you know, the film industry as well. And we shared that in common, that love of art, that love of creating. And he said to me that he never really thought about movies in that way before, or making movies or getting involved in movies until I came along. He says that I was the one that got him. I was so passionate about movies and making movies and being in movies and movies and movies and movies that he often says, you're the one that got me into it. He says, I don't even know if I'd be doing now what I'm doing or even care about movies to the degree that I do now if it wasn't for you. And I'm like, oh, well, thanks. I appreciate that. I guess it was my infectious, sort of contagious love of film that got him into it as well. And so, but ironically, we're best friends today, but ironically, Bruce and I were only in the same school for 2 years, grade 7 and 8. We were never in the same class, ever. We were never in the same class, ever. Except for the first day that we met. We were in the same homeroom. And then after that day, he got shifted out of that homeroom and placed in another class, another homeroom. Why? I don't know. I don't know if he would remember. Bruce, if you're watching, he's not watching. He's too busy working right now. But I don't know if he would remember why that is. I don't know. I mean, it was the first day, so I guess they were still trying to shuffle some people around. I'm not sure. But that first day, we were in the same class, and it was just enough to make the connection, and that was it. Now, we saw each other at recess or at lunch or, you know, in the hall. Hey, man, what's going on? Hey, you know, that kind of thing. But we were never in the same class ever again. And I went to a different high school than he did. I went to Sir Robert Borden High School in Nepean, Ontario, which is a suburb of Ottawa. and Bruce went to Canterbury High School in Ottawa, which was a arts high school. But we remained best friends, and here we are today, almost 30 years later, 28 years later, still friends. So that's kind of funny that now we would hang out through our high school life. Obviously, we'd get together on weekends or things like that. It's not like we didn't see each other at all, but a big part of that relationship building that you have with a best friend is actually in school, during school hours, right? Being in the same class, going to the same school events, the same drama, the girls you like, the girls that like you, whatever the case is, right? A big part of that building is being in the same school from 9 a.m. to 2 or 3 p.m. Monday to Friday, every day for 4 or 5 years. I mean, that really is sort of the thing. And we didn't have that. So that's really cool. You know what I mean? Anyway, always wanted to do that, right? Always wanted to be part of the movies or part of, something like that. So when it came time to apply for college, I already knew what I wanted to do. But I didn't have the grades to get into, fair enough, I didn't have the grades to get into a top university like McGill or U of T. But I wanted more of a hands-on approach. I don't know if it's like this in the States, but here in Canada, when we say college and university, in the States, you can say college and university, and it's sort of thrown around interchangeably. Like it kind of not necessarily means the same thing, but you can call college, it means like you're going to university. But anyway, here in Canada, they're two very different things. I mean, they're the same kind of thing, but it's different. College is more practical and hands-on, and university is very theory-based. I know it's like that in the States as well to a degree. So I wanted a more practical hands-on approach. And instead of going to acting school, I really at that point, although I loved acting and performing and did a lot of stage, acted in my own movies. Of course, Bruce and I, through the early to mid 90s, our teenage years, we made home amateur movies all the time, made home amateur films all the time. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I still have them on VHS somewhere. And I was always, even from a young boy, I was always doing crazy voices and all that kind of stuff. I got that from my father. You could say I had my first professional on-air experience at the age of 13 in 1992 on 54 Rock in Ottawa, Ontario. My dad did a commentary every morning on the radio. And on this morning, he brought me in and he let me do it. I made something up, wrote it down, or he wrote it down, and I put on some British accent, it was probably terrible, where I pretended I was working with the Queen or something like that. It was some crazy thing. I didn't think they aired it. They actually aired it. They aired it. So you could say that was my first professional on-air experience all the way back in 92 or 93, one of the two. And of course, my friends all listened to the radio station, so they heard me that morning. I was like this little celebrity in the school that day, It was kind of fun. So I've always been into that, right? And so I applied to quite a few colleges because I wanted to go to film school. I wanted to learn more about how movies were made, right? How to make movies. Right? That's what I wanted, because I could have gone to theater school. I could have gone the acting route, and maybe I should have. Now, I did end up with an acting diploma from an acting school in Toronto a few years later, but that was after I left college. But at that point in time, in the late 90s, I was really into making movies. I wanted to make movies. I wanted to know how movies were made. That's what I really wanted to do. So I was applying to several different schools, and I finally got accepted to Niagara College in Niagara Falls, and they have several campuses. I think they have one in Welland, Ontario, Niagara Falls, Ontario, and there might even be one in St. Catharines, Ontario. I'm not sure. And I applied to their broadcasting program. Now, their broadcasting program was really cool and interesting to me because you had the opportunity your first year to take all three of the main sort of subjects. So as it relates to, you could take radio, TV, and film. You could study radio, TV, and film. Whereas a lot of the colleges I was looking at, those were separate courses altogether. Now, in retrospect, looking back, I actually that like at first, I'm 18. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, 18, 19 maybe. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, this is great. I get to take all three. Now, everybody learns differently and everybody has a different pace for which they learn. Everybody is different. I'm not saying that that is the wrong way to structure a course, because clearly there are people that graduate, have graduated, did graduate, continue to graduate, are graduating right now from that program. I did not graduate from the Niagara College Broadcasting program, the film program. I did not graduate from the program. One of the main reasons why I didn't graduate, I left. I left because I started to lose interest. Because for me, there was so much work that I found that I was falling behind and I was starting to lose interest and get frustrated. So I don't know if it's still like this, but how the program worked was that your first year you take all three, radio, TV, and film, but you also take a broadcast management class, a broadcast class, a current events class, right? A computer class, an English class. Like you had all these other classes that you would take as well, not just the radio, TV, and film. So I found the workload enormous. Now, again, like I said, obviously there are people that were able to, ride it out and able to actually go with the flow. I just couldn't. For me, like dealing with the film was enough. And I also found myself, although they're interconnected in a lot of ways, there's a lot of parallels that when you're learning about film and film production and the business of film, and then you leave that, say you're doing that all morning, and then in the afternoon you have some radio classes. Well, radio is very different from film production, although there are some parallels in there that you can find. I found myself losing interest because it's like my passion and my interest is being taken away and then thrown over here to another thing that really doesn't have anything to do with this, but it's just as cool. But yeah, I just found it hard psychologically. And then you take that away and then you go into TV, and a lot of people loved it. A lot of people just loved it all. I think I was more niche. Now, your second year is the year that you specialize in. You pick which one you like, and then you start to hone in on that. Now, I don't know if that's how they still operate. I don't know. This is years ago. But years ago, that's how it was. And and then my second year, I found that I was beginning to struggle, start to get by. It was just a snowball effect. But I did learn a lot. I learned a lot about the business of making movies, film marketing, how movies work, the lighting and cinematography. I shot my first 16 millimeter film in film school. I forget what it was called now, but it was really a really cool process and just experience. I shot the first movie on film I ever shot. Of course, now I don't even know if they're shooting movies on film anymore, but in schools. But we shot, maybe they do as a thing where you have to learn about it. But we shot my very first little movie that I shot in film school was on 16 millimeter, and it was a 1-minute short called Flower Power. And it was just, and we were and it was just sort of to get used to the equipment, get used to the camera, understand lighting. And it was just this, I think I even remember, the girl's name. I think she's on, I think so. I think it was Dina Pellegrini, if I'm not mistaken. Dina, if you're watching, how you doing? She was in my class and she was part of my group. And I got her, she was my, I was the director and the camera operator, and she was like my script supervisor, if you will. You know what I mean? Making sure that we were shooting everything right and the continuity was correct. And then we got this actor, not this actor, but this guy in our group, and I forget his name now. I don't even know what his name is. But all it was this flower that was on a hill, and it was beautiful and everything was great. It was in this pot and all this kind of stuff. And there was this, the sun shining down and everything. And then in the background, you begin, and it's on this hill, right? And the hill goes down like this, and the flower's here, and the camera's over here. So, and then you begin to see the top of this guy's head. I wish I had this movie. I wish I do, but I don't. And you begin to see the top of his head, and he's coming up and coming up and coming up. And then then he gets to the top, and you just see his legs, and he kicks over the potted flower, and it goes flying all over the place, and that's the end of the movie. That's it. It was 1 minute, a 1 minute short. That was our first thing we had to do. And I also remember taking stills as well. Our first project, before we did that, our first project was to take a still camera, a film camera with a light meter inside of it. Okay, we weren't using DSLRs, and we were to shoot a movie per se, but it's in stills. And that's what we had to do first. So I gathered up a couple of my friends. We went out, and I had this little idea about this. It's so college. The two girls, one girl offers her friend some drugs. She doesn't want to take it. She gets angry. She runs off, into the city, but her friend feels bad and then goes after her to try and find her. And then they make up and they hug at the end. I made it so cinematic. I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I made it so, that was one of the compliments I got from everybody in the class, was like, that was like fucking epically cinematic. And I took all sorts of epic shots. We went out, made sure that, the light meter was correct and it was properly exposed. There were people that had their film developed, and the professor would come back and be like, yeah, this is too dark. Like, you can't use this. Guys, light meter. Here's, you have to remember what we taught you and all this kind of stuff. And now, mind you, I was outside too, which really helped. But, and then we had to design a soundtrack. Now, we could use music that's already out there, right? Not create our own, but use music to complement the visuals. And that's what I did. I used stuff from Star Wars and like it was very, I do say it was the most cinematic movie experience slideshow that I think, anybody ever saw, because me, I'm making it like all the detail and the cues and the moments where the music hits and, saying we're watching the dark room and the slides and shit. It was great. I had a lot of fun. The shitty thing about that though was I got a 98% on my pictures in terms of composition and lighting and framing and all that kind of jazz. Got a 98%. But my professor gives me about, I think it was a 54 or 55% in the presentation of it all. And I remember I walked into his office one day. His name was Greg Darbison. I don't know if he still teaches there. Greg, if you're watching, you probably don't remember this. I walked into his office, Mr. Darbison, Greg Darbison, and I said, how can I get a 98% on all this, but a 55% on the presentation? And he said, well, I just noticed that you were, handling the music, you were turning the volume up, turning the volume down. He said, it needs to be a constant, like the mix has to be there. And I'm like, dude, it's because of your fucking player. I said that to him too. I said, your player is garbage. I said, it doesn't matter how I mix your play. Well, now I was livid. I was livid about that. I forget what ended up happening after that, but I was just livid about that. Anyway, so film school was really cool, and I had a really good time, but I started to struggle towards the end of that first year because there was so much work. Just when I would get done a film project, like, oh my God, I got radio and TV to do now. Holy shit, I have a current events project that I have to do on Germany. Oh my God, and you had to take these. And it's like, oh my God, I have a broadcast management project. I got a broadcast journalism project. Oh my God, it was so intense. Now you might be at home thinking, geez, that fucking is crazy. Yeah, but people graduate from the program all the time. Clearly it's not too much for a lot of people, but it was for me. And I think it was just the style in which I learned, the kind of guy I am. I just didn't have the patience. I didn't have the patience for that. If it was just film, maybe. And in retrospect, maybe I should have applied to a university where maybe I would have been able to get into a film solely. But even then, you're taking other little classes as well. But anyway, so one of my favorite subjects in film school was the business of film. Now, again, this goes back a long time, 20 years ago. But I mean, certain things have changed with the evolution of technology and things like that. But the business side of film, how movies are made, in terms of unions and guilds and things you have to factor in, and it hasn't changed much. I mean, there's an evolution of things, right? And things grow and evolve, but the same principles still apply. And I really enjoyed that class because it made me understand, it made me appreciate movies a lot more and made me appreciate, how movies were made. And I think back to when I was a little kid and thinking about those movies and having those thoughts and feelings that I couldn't even really intellectualize as a young boy, but I just was really interested. Oh, I wonder how they did that. How did they make that come out of there? Like in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, at the very end of the movie when, the glove comes out of the girl's chest and stuff. Really cool, right? Really cool. And I thought it was really cool too. But then after the coolness wore off, after I watched it 30,000 times, I start to think, I wonder how they did that. How do they do that? Obviously, there isn't really a hand coming out of her chest. I wonder how they did that. So I love the whole idea of how movies were made and things like that. And of course, as I grew, I started to learn more about marketing. And marketing was a class we took. Not a class. I shouldn't say it was a marketing class. It was in the business of film. There was a couple of weeks where we were learning all about marketing and how movies were made. And I didn't even know until that moment. It's like, wow, so there's a whole separate marketing department. Like there's a whole bunch of people that's what they do, and we learned about that and we learned about budgets, and it was just really cool. It was that I found. So you can imagine being so like, wow, this is great. This is great. That when I leave that class, I want to think about that more. And I want to go home and think about that and maybe write something about that or learn more about that. But no, as soon as I leave that class, it's like, hey, time for radio. And that in and of itself is really fucking cool. Really cool. I mean, my radio professor was Chris Jenneret, who is the son of Rick Jenneret, the voice of the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, that was really cool. Wow, Rick Jenneret's your dad? That's really awesome, man. Rick Jenneret, one of the greatest play-by-play announcers in sports history, not just hockey history, sports history. He's still doing. He's like 78 or 80 or something. He's still doing. I think he's at the end of his rope now, but he's still doing it. Anyway, his son was my radio professor. And radio on itself was great, was really cool, but it was really hard to disconnect psychologically from all the other things that I was really passionate about. Television, I wasn't a big fan of my television professor. I didn't find her engaging enough. I found her a little stiff. And I just wasn't a big fan of hers. Television, I liked learning about it. We had the big control room and we had to write our own pilots and our own shows and we had to learn about casting and things like that. So there were a lot of parallels to film that was interesting. But again, you have to be all in. It was just very difficult. But I learned a lot. And there's still a lot today. And of course, since I left Niagara College in 2001, so it's almost 20 years ago. And I first applied in 98, I think it was when I first applied. But then I got accepted in 99. So anyway, so now since then, obviously, I don't just solely rely on what I've learned from film school. Certainly when I do talk to you guys about, how certain things work or what the probability is of that, I'm basing it on not just what I learned 20 something years ago, which the same principles would still apply, but certainly because the things that I read now, like I like to keep up to date on how things work and what things have changed. Have the unions changed their rules? Have certain things changed? with the times, right? And yes, things have changed, but like I said, the same principles still apply, which is why, you know, myself or people that went to school or have studied this or work in this, they're able to say, well, this is likely because this is how it usually works. Doesn't mean it's 100% going to be true, but this is usually what that means, you know, based on that, right? So it's helped me a lot. It's helped me on this YouTube channel as well to talk to you guys about it because I'm always really interested in the business of film and marketing and how it all works. And I'm still learning. Look, there's still lots of things I don't know. There's still people that say, hey, Dave, actually, it's this, and this, and this, and that, and that. And I'm like, oh, that's really fucking cool. I didn't know that. Or I know some of it, but then somebody, you know, who works in the industry at a certain level will be like, well, yeah, you're right, but it's also this and this, and you got to keep that in mind because of that. And I'm like, oh, that's totally true. Yes, you're right. Thank you for sharing that. You know what I mean? I always love continuing to learn about that kind of thing because it just makes you a better, wiser person, right? You know, and then hopefully maybe there's some things that I share that they're like, oh, I didn't think of that. That's really cool. I always like to have that communal approach, you know what I mean? Put the ego aside and just try to learn as much as you can so you're better, more well-rounded. So that was my sort of, in a nutshell, and I could go on and on and on, but in a nutshell, that was kind of my film school journey. And I wanted to finish. I really did. I mean, nobody goes to school wanting to drop out, but I dropped out because I was falling too far behind. And I actually, after that, I got so, not disgruntled, but I got so disappointed by sort of the experience towards the end that I turned back to my other passion, which was performing and acting. And I love performing and acting. And towards the end of my second year, I started doing stand-up. That's right, you heard it. I started to, although only twice. I shouldn't say I started doing stand-up because that's not entirely true. I took a crack at doing stand-up. And how that happened was there was an open mic night at our on-campus college pub. And of course, I was still like, even though I was taking film and I was taking broadcast and all that kind of stuff, I was still the guy I am. I'm still cracking jokes, making people laugh, you know, all that kind of stuff, right? Outside of all that, like, it's not like I became like this serious person, you know? So people were like, Dave, you gotta do stand-up, man. You gotta do open mic. Like, you're fucking hilarious. I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I wasn't nervous about being on stage. I don't get nervous about being in front of people. I just was like, oh, I don't know. I've got to stand up. I got to write material. I don't know. Anyway, long story short about this, open mic night, I go up and I do it. And it's a big success. It's such a big success that the owner of the pub comes out and says in front of everybody, we need you to come back when we have regular comics here. And then in the break between the two comics, because I usually have two, you go up on stage and do your thing. And I'm like, all right, let's do it. So about, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks later or something, a month later, which gave me time to write a bit. Like I basically performed what I did on the open mic, which was just making shit up, things that I found funny, you know, observational things, like a Jerry Seinfeld kind of humor, but of course I'm doing it in my own way, right? You know what I mean? Things I found dumb and funny, things that my dad, you know, I took from my dad. And I honed it a bit more, getting ready for this stand-up. So I went up there, open mic night, a regular comic night. A couple weeks later, it's packed, right? It's like legit, you know, thing. I go up there and do my thing, and it's a huge success. And what's interesting is I noticed that the comic, I don't know who he was, but the comic that was up before me, the regular comic, the guy that was hired to be there, the professional comedian, so to speak, right? He's doing his thing, and then he takes a break, and it's my turn to go up. And I'm like, you know, I go up and do my thing, and you know me, I'm loud and animated and theatrical, right? He wasn't like that. He was funny, but he wasn't like me. He wasn't like, you know, getting all animated and doing all sorts of voices and characters and stuff. Well, wouldn't you know it? And I'm not making this up. After I'm done and everybody's, you know, clapping, woo, all right, Dave, because obviously people were there to support me, right? He gets back up. I'm at the back of the pub, maybe having a drink or something with a couple of friends. And he gets up to finish his set. And he starts almost not imitating me, but he starts becoming more theatrical. He starts doing voices. And I'm thinking this. I'm thinking, it's like he liked what I did and he liked the response from the audience, so he's like doing that. It was weird. And the audience was still laughing, and I'm sitting there thinking, maybe it's just me. Like, maybe it's just me. You know what I mean? But no, a few people came up to me right then and there. I was like, dude, is he fucking doing you? Like, because he wasn't like that before you. And now all of a sudden he's going, hey, you know, and he wasn't mimicking me. He was, or mocking me. He was doing a real set, like, you know, his set, but it was like, unless the second part of his set required that, I don't know. But it was just very strange. Anyway, so that was really cool. But stand-up's a lot of work. And I knew from that point, that was before I left, I wanted to become an actor. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to fuel this need and this desire to perform and be in front of people and be animated and theatrical and all that kind of jazz. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to perform because I had lost, not interest, but I had become discouraged by my film school experience in terms of falling behind and all that kind of jazz. Even though I learned a lot, because like I said, there's still a lot I take with me, I became discouraged. So after I left college in 2001, I moved in with my mother. And so I stayed in the Toronto area. I did not go back home where I grew up from the age of 10 to 19 in Ottawa. I stayed in the Toronto area because Toronto is the New York / LA of Canada, right? It is the entertainment capital of Canada. It'd be like, you know, if you want to make it, you got to be here. Or Vancouver. Vancouver is also known as Hollywood North as well because of the proximity to Los Angeles. But Toronto and Vancouver have massive ties to the entertainment industry in the United States. They shoot all sorts of things up here all the time. So I knew I needed to be in this area. I didn't want to go back to Ottawa. You know what I mean? It'd be like going back to Washington and trying to get into the entertainment industry. It just doesn't make any logical sense. So I knew I needed to stay here. So I did. And I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to start my professional career as an actor. So I, with the help of my mother, because obviously I just not finished college, but left college, and I didn't have any money. And I moved in with her, and she said, well, listen, if you're serious about this, I will pay to get you headshots, and I will pay for any classes or things like that. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much, Mom. This is so great. And we did. She did. And I remember my very first audition was for a music video. And the music, I don't know if the music video still, I didn't get it. But the music video, I got an agent in Toronto, which ended up not being a great agent. They weren't a scam or anything. They weren't working the way I wanted them to or thought they should. But anyway, so I had an agent, and my first audition was for a music video by a girl band. I don't know if this was the name of the band or if this was the name of the song. But in the early 2000s, I think it was a girl pop band called Untamed. It was probably a Canadian band. You probably never heard of them. And they're probably not around still. But they were looking for nerds for their music video. And I get called down. Now, this is so funny. So I'm not a nerd, clearly. I mean, I'm a nerd. I'm a geek, you know, but I don't look like, you know, a nerd. I mean, if you were to see me on the street, you're not going to be like, oh, hey, that's a nerd. You know what I mean? So I took it so literally. I dressed up like a nerd from like Revenge of the Nerds. Like, I mean, that's kind of like, okay, like I had the pants pulled up. I had because I'm fucking selling it. I'm going to this auditions. I use these old glasses that my dad had, or I think my mother had, these old horn rimmed like 80s glasses. I go in there. Well, when I get to the audition, wouldn't you know it, that there's real nerds there. There's real nerds there. And now it looks like I'm mocking them. And I'm making fun of them. And I'm like, oh my God. So I get into the audition room, and the girls from the band were there, and they're like, I had like sideburns and everything. And I looked like a jock, not like a 6'2", not that kind of a jock, but I didn't look like a nerd, you know? And they're like, you don't look like a nerd. I think you should maybe audition for the jock. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm thinking. When I walked in here and I see a bunch of legitimate Steve Urkel sitting there, and they're not like dressed like Steve Urkel, they're just Steve Urkel kind of guys. I'm like, I think my agent got this fucking backwards, you know? So anyway, I auditioned for the job. I'm just remembering when I was doing the on-camera test, I was there, and before the girls from the band were like, hey, yeah, you don't look like I was standing in front of the camera going like this, because I'm being like all, you know, crazy and nerdy and silly and, you know, dumb and, you know, whatever. And I could hear the girls laughing behind the wall. Like I could hear them. And then one of them comes and is like, you're not like, you know. Anyway, that was my very, very first professional audition that I ever went on as an actor. And I started to do that. I started to go on more and more, updated my headshots. I auditioned for commercials. I auditioned for docudramas. I was in a couple. I was in one for Sherlock Holmes. I was in a couple episodes of 0 Hour, which is a documentary series playing bit parts and you know, how like, you know, they're docudramas are essentially like they're telling a story of something and then they cut away to a dramatization of what they're telling, right? You know what I mean? I was in a couple of those playing, you know, bit parts and, you know, those kinds of things. I was an ATF agent in one, walking around examining, you know, the bomb was it a bomb or was something like that. I forget now, but you know, I was doing that kind of thing. I was working my way up, right? Doing bit parts and things like that. And being on set, you know, you learn a lot. I mean, these were professional, legitimate productions. And I loved being on set. I loved being there in that environment, watching the cameras, watching the crew. I was always asking questions. I always felt like I was badgering them. You know, I'm like, hey, so, the director of photography just walked over there and adjusted that. Why did he do that? I'm pretty sure they were like, why do you care, dude? You're just the fucking actor. And you're not even a principal actor. You're like the bit actor that's going to walk from there to there, open the case, hand that to our principal actor, and then walk away. Like, what do you care? Who is this guy? You know what I mean? That's kind of how I felt a little bit. Like they were kind of like, Dave, I don't know. So it's just kind of funny. Like it was one of those things where, it's just that I liked so much. I was really interested in the production, that being on set ignited that movie making, that filmmaking side of me again, that I had lost for a couple of years there because of my discouragement, being in film school. But being on set and seeing how it's all done, it's a professional set. It's like, wow, I'm like on a professional set here. It's fucking great. You know what I mean? It was really cool. And I went on a couple commercial auditions as well. Not a couple, quite a few. And I remember, like I tell this all the time, a high school friend of mine named Melanie Scrofano, who you know from Winona Earp. She plays the lead, Winona Earp, in the sci-fi series Winona Earp. And she also played, I believe, she had a supporting role in the movie Ready or Not. She wasn't the lead. She was the coke-addicted sister-in-law or something like that in that movie. She's great, and she's been in a lot of things. She's done very well. Well, we were coming up together in Toronto, and I remember we both auditioned, and I went to high school with her. She was a great friend. We used to watch. She used to live not in my neighborhood, but she lived in the neighborhood sort of across the main street and on the other side. There was a couple of times we'd walk home, you know, together, shoot the shit, and be like, hey, you know, see you later, see ya. And she was always into modeling and things like that. So I always knew that she was going to pursue a career in that, in some form of, you know, the entertainment industry as well. Anyway, so we both auditioned for I want to say it was a Baycell commercial, like a butter commercial or a margarine commercial or something. Neither of us got it because when I saw the commercial, well, obviously I know I didn't get it because I wasn't in it and she was not in it. But I remember seeing her at the audition, be like, "Oh, hey, how's it going? Hey, what's going on?" You know, and she's done very well for herself now. She's, I mean, you know, the lead in Winona Earp and being in movies like Ready or Not, and she's great. So if Melanie, if you're watching, awesome shit, woman. So yeah, so that was in the early 2000s. And then in about 2003, I broke my front teeth playing road hockey, street hockey up in Ottawa when I went up to visit some friends. And that put my on-camera acting career on a bit of a hiatus because, you know, you can't, unless they require somebody with, you know, a hole in their face. Your teeth are, I mean, that's it. It's done right now. I got to get this fixed. I got to scrounge the money together to get this fixed. I was a starving artist at the time. I was doing bit parts and docudramas and auditioning for commercials and things like that. But I certainly was not, you know, I wasn't making bank. It's not like I was the lead in any of these things, right? So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I had to turn to my dad and my mom, guys, can you help me with this? And because it was going to cost quite a few $1,000s to fix the hole in my face with my teeth. And that put my on-camera acting career on hiatus. I always knew I wanted to come back to it. But in the meantime, it was my mother who said to me, while we get this sorted out, because I can speak okay. Like I can speak and you don't, and I had a fake tooth put in there for a bit. And actually my gum here, I don't know if you can see it, my gum here, right around there, is a little darker than the rest of my gums. Or, yeah, my gums. Is that right? Gum? The rest of my gums. It's a little bit darker. And that was my fault. It was because I left the fake tooth in there too long. And it kind of discoloration there a bit, which is a little unfortunate. But anyway, so I had a fake tooth in there. So when I spoke, you wouldn't know it. Like, to just hear me, you wouldn't know that I was in the middle of getting surgery done and I had a fake tooth and a chip this and I had to get that put in there and a root canal and a cap and all this kind of stuff, right? So my mom said, David, your voice is like, you always do these voices and voice. I think you should get into voiceover. Talk to your agent. Do they have a voiceover division or section or something? You know, do something. Keep it going. Keep there. Get into voiceover. And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I know. I'd love to do that because I love that kind of thing, right? So I did. So I created my, in the middle of waiting for surgery and doing all this kind of stuff, I created my first voiceover demo, which was on CD. It was terrible. I mean, it was fine to clearly and it was recorded at home, which you don't do. It's like taking your own headshots. You don't take your own headshots. I mean, maybe you take a couple of photographs of yourself so you can show an agent or show a modeling agency or a talent or somebody. They're like, oh, I can see that this person is beautiful. I can see that this man is very handsome and attractive. Yes, but he's got to have professional headshots. We can't just toss these, photos around of him at his barbecue with his buddies. You know what I mean? Like, you need So my friend Brian was over. This is about 2004, I want to say. Yeah, late 304. He was over and we recorded at home in my mom's basement on my computer at the time, a compact, whatever the compact computer, whatever they are. And we recorded on a headset microphone, a voiceover demo. And I was using, for those of you that are familiar with software and that are familiar with the software Adobe Audition. This was back when Adobe Audition was Cool Edit Pro. Do you guys remember Cool Edit Pro? It was before Adobe got their hands on it and restructured it and changed it and called it Adobe Audition. Well, Cool Edit Pro was the software that I was using. And so this takes you back. And we mixed in the music and all that kind of stuff because I didn't have any actual work, right? I wasn't a working voice actor at the time. And so we used that and we created a demo that I think sounded pretty good, but it wasn't a voiceover demo. I mean, it was a demo, but it wasn't the proper structure and format because I didn't know what it was. And I sent it around to a bunch of agencies in Toronto, a bunch of voiceover agencies. And then finally, the agency that I'm with now liked what they heard. They were like, there's a lot of potential here. We like this. This is not a voiceover demo, but we like this. And they were willing to sign me if I was willing to get a voiceover demo done. So that's what I did. And from that moment forward, I never looked back in terms of the voiceover side of things really took off. I've been wanting to get back into on-camera acting a lot. It's one of the reasons, not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons, one of them. Again, not the only one, but one of the reasons, one of the attractive things about playing Freddy Krueger in Dylan's New Nightmare is the opportunity to perform on camera. Now, I'm not performing as myself. You probably wouldn't know it was me if you didn't know it was me. But doing that is, yes, I have to do that because it's built in me. In 2015, I also did a small role in this little campus college thing for for Humber College, I think it was, which I did post on my YouTube channel. I played this villain kind of guy. Maybe I'll post it again because a lot of people I don't think have seen it, but I love doing that kind of thing. I love performing. I have a lot of theater experience. I do have on-camera experience. So I can do it. I'm not afraid to do it. I can do it. And it's a lot of fun to do. But the voiceover side of things was what really took off and what really sort of at that moment while I was getting my teeth fixed and things like that. And by the time I got my teeth fixed, I was very unhappy with the talent agency I was with that was handling my on-camera side. So the agency that I signed with for voiceover was not the same agency that I was currently with for on-camera acting, for on-camera. And I wasn't really happy with the way they were handling this hiatus that I was on. So I decided to leave them. And my goal was to find another on-camera agent. But funny enough, the voiceover work began to sort of spiral, in a good way, like down this avenue of success. And I just didn't look back. And I really enjoyed the voiceover side of things because in voiceover, depending on what you're doing, because there's many different genres of voiceover, but in voiceover, you're able to tap into the performance side of things because this is voice acting. This is really, it's very rarely about the kind of voice you have. It's all about your acting and performing abilities. And you're able to utilize those acting and performing abilities in voiceover. Again, it depends on what you're doing, of course, but you are able to do that. So I was fulfilling that performing and acting need that I had, that I guess I just sort of not stopped, but kind of began to really focus on the voiceover. And the very first professional voiceover I ever did, I mean, you could say, like I said at the beginning of the show, you could say that the first professional voiceover or on-air experience I ever had was going back to 1992 when I did that commentary for my father. You know what I mean? I wasn't a voice actor or anything like that, but I mean, there I am on the air, 54 Rock, going all across, the nation's capital here in Canada, doing a thing, doing a commentary, there I am. And I did that twice. I did it in 92 and 93. So you could say that, but for all intents and purposes, you could say that. But my first real professional voiceover was in 2004. Was it 4? Something like that. I was hired to do a birthday party voiceover with the trailer voice. And it was an internal thing. It wasn't going to be seen anywhere. It was just internal. But that's what I was hired to do. And I went and I did it. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess that's what I'm, all right, cool. It was okay. It was fine. It wasn't that exciting. But the more I stuck with it, the more that I landed, little commercials and things like that. And my very first movie trailer I ever did was for The Descent from 2005. And I remember I booked that through my agent, and I think it was through my agent. Was it through my agent or was it through? Yeah, no, I think it was. I think it was through my agent. Because I don't think I had my website up at that time. No, in 2000, no, I don't think I did. I'd have to go back and have a look. Been quite a long time. But that was the first trailer I ever did. And I remember it was a very surreal experience to be able to do that for a professional, Hollywood level film. And that was the moment when I really felt like I was making a bit of headway and really looking at the environment that I was in and really enjoying the voiceover process, enjoying one of the most important parts of the entertainment industry. One of the most important parts, but yet it is often misunderstood, unrecognized, and unappreciated. And that's, to no fault of most people. I mean, if you're out of sight, you're out of mind, right? You hear voice actors every day, whether it's on radio and television, whether it's movies, whether it's, corporate presentation and training videos, whether it's audiobooks, whether it's narration, animation, network promos, game trailers, games, video games. I mean, you hear voice actors all the time, maybe even every day of your life. But because we are out of sight, we're generally out of mind, and not a lot of people know how the voiceover side of things work. So that was I was like, wow, I just did a trailer for The Descent. Now, to be fair, like in a lot of cases when it comes to movie trailers, you're not necessarily the one and only guy that has done it or doing it. You might be doing it for your region, your country, but in another country, they have somebody else that's doing it. Somebody might be doing the local spots. Another one might be doing the national ones. Of course, there's Spanish as well. There's different languages as well. There's trailers for, the Avengers in English, and there's trailers for the Avengers in Spanish. And it's not necessarily the same guy. In fact, I know the guys that do that. Christian Lance, if you're watching. Awesome stuff on your Spanish trailer VOs, by the way. So it's a very sort of, there's a lot of factors that come into play, but I did it. And that was really cool. And then in 2006, I landed my first I don't know if it's still like this. I'd have to talk to my fellow VO colleagues. I could see it still being like this. I could, but the landscape is changing. I mean, with technology and streaming becoming huge now and television dropping off and cable dropping off and has been for quite some time, it's probably not like it was years ago. But I know when I first began, the gold mine and the Super Bowl for voiceover would be to have a regular gig doing network promos. You're hired as the network promo voice for NBC or ABC or CBS or Fox or, whatever it is, right? Because it's potentially great money and it's consistent. You are consistently working. We are actors. Voice actors are actors. I'm just like an on-camera actor. We are only working when we're hired to do so. Do you know what I mean? But the great thing about having a network promo gig is that you are, depending on the gig, some are per session, some you're paid by the work that you do. Sometimes it's contract, right? But it's like jackpot because it's almost consistent, guaranteed work. Oh, I just signed a contract to be the voice of NBC for 3 years. Oh my God, this is great. Whew. Any actor will tell you, okay. I'm working. You know what I mean? That's great. And it maybe is good money. So my first promo gig, I landed a promo gig being the network promo voice for English language TLN here in Toronto. Now, TLN in Toronto, it was a Spanish and Italian station. It stood for Tele Latino. And, but they had a very strong English side as well, where they played The Sopranos and Everybody Loves Raymond, and they had all sorts of, Italian sort of centric, but they were English shows. And they wanted more of they were about to broadcast, I don't know if it was North America's first broadcast of The Sopranos in syndication, or if it was Canada's first broadcast of The Sopranos in syndication. I can't remember. But they got they got the license to broadcast The Sopranos, and they wanted a voice that was going to, like, you know, bring some weight and some gravitas to this marketing campaign. So they wanted a trailer type voice. So I was hired. I went in, I auditioned, and I got the gig, and they wanted me to do all their English content, not in the trailer voice, but certainly, you know, I can do all sorts of stuff, right? So that was my first network promo gig, and I did that for 3 years. And from 2006 to 2009, and it was guaranteed work. And, you know, and in that time I was doing other things as well. And here's it's so important to be able to actually, you know, what's so important is to be able to actually, Forrest Black says, you ever read the chat? I do read the chat, but I read the chat once I'm done the main topic. Be patient, my friend, be patient. What's so cool about this is that the relationships that I built at Telelatino, there was a woman, I should say, she's a woman, not a girl, who was freelancing doing stuff for other things as well. And through her, I met her at TLN, but through her, she was the one that hired me to do a promo for Dave Chappelle's Block Party. And she was the one that hired me to do a trailer for Grindhouse in 2006 as well. And that was great. Like, that's an example of the relationships that you make along the way. People think of you. You know, they're like, hey, let's get Dave to do that. You know, hey, Dave, I'm working on this thing. Let's get you to do that. You know what I mean? And that was really cool too. That was sort of, you know, I was doing Dave Chappelle's Block Party and I was doing Grindhouse, and I was like, wow, this is fantastic, you know? And so it just sort of began to, from that, it really ventured into a territory where I didn't look back. And my career just began to sort of evolve from there. And the people that I've met along the way, and the producers that I've met, and the casting directors I've met, and I mean, I've worked with Emmy winners, Emmy nominees, Voice Arts Award winners and nominees, and it's just been a really cool experience that I don't take for granted. Anytime I'm in a booth doing a trailer for Sony Pictures or Warner Brothers, or, you know, whatever the case is, it really is it's an experience that I don't take for granted, that I don't forget, you know, because I think it's important to be able to really soak up those experiences and appreciate where you are, where you've come from, and where you've yet to go. And I don't claim to know it all, you know, even when it comes to voiceover. I'm continually, you know, learning about these things. And there's lots of things that people say, I'm like, oh, that's a good point. I didn't know that. And I love that aspect of the entertainment industry, because technology is evolving and the way people do things and things like that are, you know, always evolving. I find myself learning a lot as we go along. But yeah, it's just been a very interesting, fun experience that I've learned so much about how important the voiceover industry is and how vital it is to the entertainment industry, and how much I support, you know, shows like the VAAs, the Voice Arts Awards, and because it brings recognition, and it brings recognition to an incredibly important part of the voiceover industry. I understand. It's why, in a perfect world, I would much rather have the professional voiceover talent doing all of the you know, mainstream Hollywood animated films. They don't, because of business, because they want a name, they want an A-list actor to be on the marquee, you know. But fortunately, sometimes those A-list actors are not bad, and they're pretty good in the role, and then sometimes they're not very good, you know. And that's a whole other thing there. But I would much prefer to see the professional voice talent be voicing mainstream Hollywood films, but in terms of animation. But I do understand why they don't, because it's business. They want that marquee name to sell and put asses in the seats. So the professional voiceover talent in Hollywood are largely, you know, doing the additional voices. Whenever you see in an animated film the credits rolling and you see additional voices, and then there's a long list of names that you have no idea who they are. Those are your professional Hollywood voiceover talent doing voices like, it's the tree in the background, or it's the dog barking, or it's the baby crying, right? Or maybe there's some side character that comes in and has a cameo for, 30 seconds or something like that. But your main leads in the movie are all people like, it's Ellen DeGeneres, and it's, Harrison Ford, and it's, because they're names and they sell. But it wasn't always like that. I mean, many, many, many moons ago, it wasn't always like that. That really came into play. It was a little bit before that too, but really thanks to Robin Williams and the genie in Aladdin. But Robin Williams is a special case. I mean, you can't look at Robin Williams and go, well, let's get every guy in there now. He was brilliant. But anyway, so that's one thing that kind of, I think about the VO industry as it relates to Hollywood that I wish we could have more of a piece of the pie on, but I do understand that. So voiceover, the professional talent, obviously at the Hollywood level in terms of animation, is in your television, your cartoons, your Nickelodeon, Adult Swim, Family Guy, all that kind of stuff. But voiceover has been a career that I have learned a lot. Like I said, I've met a lot of really cool people, worked with a lot of really cool people. To have the opportunity to attend the Voice Arts Awards 3 times now. I've been nominated 4 times. I couldn't attend the second year I was nominated, but have attended the others. And being on the back lot at Warner Brothers and hanging out with people and walking the red carpet with, Sigourney Weaver and Rosario Dawson and people like that is surreal. It's surreal. I mean, I wasn't right beside them. I mean, they had walked the red carpet, did their thing, and then I think I was with Sigourney Weaver. I was ahead of Sigourney. First name basis here. I was ahead of Sigourney Weaver because I walked it with my girlfriend, and then we were talking. Well, we were talking with Mickey actually, Mickey Yablons, because it was the year that I treated him and his daughter, and so that was 2018. And we were standing off to the side talking, not about Halloween, but we were talking. And then Sigourney Weaver came by and was right beside us. And my girlfriend and I are like, fucking Sigourney Weaver. It's like Sigourney Weaver. It's fucking Ripley. Fucking Ripley, bitches. And she walked by and walked off over there, or whatever. She was being led somewhere because she was accepting I forget what the award, was it the Icon Award or whatever it was? Some sort of award. But it's cool. It's surreal, to think back to where I was and how far I've come. It's just surreal. And it's strange. I'm not a very good, I'm in this game, whether it's making movies, voiceover, acting. I really am passionate about the art and about the work and the project. And it's why I'm getting better at it. But in that environment, if somebody was to lay compliments on me or it always makes me feel a little strange. I always appreciate it, but I always am I feel kind of strange because it's I don't know how to respond or act because I'm not doing it for that. You know what I mean? And it's a surreal experience, the whole thing. But voiceover is one of those things that I've enjoyed, but I certainly want to get back to doing some on-camera acting as well. I would love to do more on-camera acting. I obviously am in late development on our fan film, It's Me, Billy, which is going to be a professional, well, hopefully, if we can raise the money, which we're counting on you guys to help us with that, will be a professional independent short film. So that is definitely going to help to whet my appetite and fulfill my need to make movies, because that's still in me. It's still very much in me. And then performing Freddy Krueger in Dylan's New Nightmare fulfills the other side of my passions, which is acting and performing and being in front of people and being in a movie, not just making a movie. So I'm really excited about that. So that's really cool. And then there's this show that I do, my YouTube channel, which fulfills a hosting need, I guess. Not really, I have a need to host, but certainly fulfills a yabbering and talking and talking with you guys. And, it fulfills that kind of thing. And then there's the voiceover side as well. So I find that I'm attempting to kill a few birds with one stone here, but, and believe it or not, I've been talking now for an hour and 15 minutes. That really is a nutshell. I mean, I could go on and on and on here, but I do want to get to the chat room and answer some of your questions and your super chats. And, but that really is, that's a compartmentalized version, a Cliff Notes version, like I like to say here, of sort of my journey from film school to where I am now. And I don't take it for granted. It's really cool to be able to do some of the things that I do. But in voiceover, like I said, it's such a vast, there's so many things we can do. I mean, I do a lot of IVR prompts. Now, IVR stands for interactive voice response. That's when you call a company and you hear, hello, welcome to, such and such, press 1 for, press 2 for. I do a lot of that stuff. Well, that's not particularly exciting. I don't particularly find that, wow, don't find that, but it's so cool that there's such a scope of what you can do as a voice actor. But when I get hired and I'm doing like the It trailer I did, I mean, that was like, fuck, I'm doing a trailer for It. What the fuck? It's great. It's really cool, and it's always surreal. I don't think I've lost that surreal sort of, it's still weird. One of these days when COVID-19 is over, one of these days, what I'd like to do, I would have to confirm it or not confirm it, but well, yeah, I guess that too. But I'd have to get it approved by whatever studio I'm going down to do a voiceover session. But the next time I get hired to do something that, you would find really cool, I will ask the studio if I can film and document the whole process. Now, I have posted, there is a video on my channel, and I posted to Instagram as well. It's a couple years old now, where you see me doing a spot for Sony Pictures' Peter Rabbit. But it's just me doing the spot, which is cool. I mean, that's cool. Like, you see me doing it, and then you see the spot, and you're like, oh, I get it. Oh, that's kind of cool. But I would love to be able to document the whole process, which I haven't done yet. I'd like to be able to confirm it with the studio, say, hey, can I, have the camera on, walk into the studio, meet the casting director or the producer or the audio engineer, they know I'm coming. They know they're going to be on camera. Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Blah, and to kind of document the whole thing. I would love to be able to do that. Some studios are pickier than others. There are some things that they don't want out there. Some casting directors and audio, engineers they just don't want to be on camera. They just don't want that. Just like, no, just come in, do your fucking thing and leave. You know what I mean? No, we don't want this whole kind of thing. But sometimes, depending on the studio, I know them a bit more, right? So because I've developed a bit of a relationship with them, I might be able to say, hey, John, do you mind if we do this? And John might be like, oh yeah, cool, no problem. But if it's somebody I haven't worked with before, that might be a bit more difficult. You know what I mean? It all depends, but I would love to be able to do that too. So anyway, like I said, I've been yabbering here, but that in a nutshell, because it is a nutshell, because like I said, there's so many things I could say, so many stories that I have. Maybe I'll do a part 2 of this. That's sort of my journey of where I've ended up now. And I don't take it for granted. And I'm very excited to see where it goes from here. I'm excited to see where, things like It's Me, Billy, and Dylan's New Nightmare, and this channel and this show, where it goes and where it takes me. And, what kind of opportunities or situations arise from doing these types of things. I'm not doing this for opportunities. If I was doing this for opportunities, I would be talking, I'd be talking about things that would get a lot of views. But, you never know where these things go. It's always interesting to me to find, it's always cool to meet people through this process, and you never know what's going to happen in any facet. So, I'm always curious to know and always excited to know where these things are going to go, are going to go. Because even though I'm 41, I'm only 41. And I would like to think I still have a lot of time left to flourish and build and keep going here in in the entertainment industry. So it's been crazy. Let's go over to the super chats, because I know some did come in. We'll go over to your questions now. 3 of them did come in. Chris Parrish sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, buddy. He says, do you have to pay for music when making a fan film? Well, when you're making a fan film, you cannot monetize that fan film because you do not own the IP. You do not own the intellectual property. You don't own the characters. You don't own it. So you can't monetize it. So you could put, copyrighted music in your fan film, and it doesn't really matter at the end of the day because you can't monetize the film anyway. Now, what can happen though is that depending on the music or who owns the copyright, you could have even though it's not monetized and not making any money, you're still using it. It's still getting a lot of publicity, a lot of free publicity. Maybe it's got 1 million views, whatever the case is, right? You're still reaping the benefits of it, and you might reap the financial benefits of it indirectly, because maybe you get hired to do something that does pay you money because of that fan film, even though you're not getting paid for the fan, if you know what I mean. So depending on who owns the music licenses, sometimes they can be like, block it right away and block your video. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes they won't. What they'll do is they'll demonetize your video so you can't make any money, but they'll run ads on your video so they make money from sometimes that happens too. Some studios and it depends. Some are more strict than others, but no, you don't have to pay for music per se to use in your fan film because you cannot make any money off of it. However, if you want to use original music and original tracks that may have been used by other people, but you lessen that probability, then you would go to sites like Audio Jungle or Pond 5 or whatever that have, stock music that is really good, but you got to pay for the tracks. Music I have on the opening of my shows here all of them are from Pond 5 and Audio Jungle. I pay for it. Maybe it costs me, like this piece of music right here. That's from pond5.com. And what I did was it costs, I forget what it costs, $25 or something like that. Oh yeah, $25. But you pay for it, you have it, you are essentially paying for the license to use that in this way, right? There's different levels of licenses that you can use, but YouTube is not going to demonetize my video because of that song, because I paid for it. And if they're like, hey, this is somebody's claiming, I can prove that I've paid for it. I have the receipt. I can use it for this, right? So that's one way to score your fan film as well, is you can go to certain sites that have horror soundscapes and music and things like that, pay for it, and then you can use it, and your fan film wouldn't be demonetized for that reason. But you still can't monetize your fan film because you don't own the IP. So whatever music you use, whether it's music you paid for or music that is already copyrighted, you still can't monetize your fan film. You can try, and maybe it'll be monetized for a little bit, but then you run the risk of having it demonetized and maybe blocked, or whatever the case is. So hopefully that answered your question. Another super chat from Joseph Formato. Hey Dave, can't watch live but sending support. Thank you very much, Joseph. Really appreciate it, buddy. Fandom Empire, good old Sean sends in a super chat. Thank you very much, Sean. Says, hey Dave, hope all is well, mate. Thanks for everything. Thank you, Fandom Empire, for sending in the super chat. And thank you very much for saying that. Really do appreciate that, Sean. Thanks so much, buddy. Let's go over here and see what others are saying. What do we got? Mark Striato says, I've been watching wrestling since 1977 to 2000, mid-2000, WWF, AWA, NWA, WCW, TNA, ECW, etc. Haven't watched wrestling in probably about 10 years or 10 plus years. Very cool. I haven't watched wrestling, well, since the Attitude Era. Since early 2000s when it was like Goldberg. It was like the tail end of that generation. I haven't watched wrestling in probably 15 years. Although I always watch it in snippets when like some of the old school guys come back, right? Because it's nostalgic. Goldberg's back. Okay, well, I'll watch his little thing, but I don't watch everything else connected to it. I'll just watch his match. Oh, that's kind of funny. It's, 53-year-old Goldberg trying to do a jackhammer. But I love Goldberg, right? Or when Stone Cold comes back or, whatever, right? But I have no idea what the hell is going on. Frank Riker sends in a super chat. Thank you very much, Frank. Says, Dave, I bought Jamie Lee Curtis a jock strap and told me the end of ends. You bought, that's amazing. Why not? Myers' mask is burnt off and needing one. He walks into a shop and sees nothing but Rosie O'Donnell masks. He picks up a gun and blows off his face. Whoa! Can you imagine if that was actually what happened? Let's go over here. Can you imagine if that is exactly what happened? I love that Frank, and I've said this many times, I love that Frank not only sends in these types of things, because they make me laugh each and every day. Frank, don't stop doing it. But sometimes he'll pay for it. And it's like, this is great. I love it. Frank is he's awesome. Frank is a great contributor to the channel. And of course, one of my awesome patrons and one of my top moderators as well. Jason Knight says, gotta go, everyone. Busy day at work today. Well, hey, thanks, Jason, for all you do, man. Thanks for your support. Take care. And we'll probably see you tomorrow. Alrighty. Robert Thidoff says, Dave, have you ever heard about the 1975 B movie The Intruder that was found in storage in 2012 and released on DVD in 2017? Decent B movie and similar to Knives Out. Should review on Two Dudes. Never heard of it. Haven't seen it. But you've got me curious. I will check it out. Tabitha Short says, the pressure is on, Frank. I have this feeling that Frank's got a Rolodex of things that he'll be able to dish out and talk about. Gary Rangel says, Dave, do you think the budget of Halloween Kills is the same as 2018, or is it a bit more because it may be a bigger movie than the last one, which could be the reason marketing is taking a while? Well, that's not the reason marketing is taking a while. Marketing's taking a while because of COVID-19. That's why. There's no reason to release a trailer now or a poster now when they don't even know what's going to happen, when the theaters are closed. So that's why you don't have a trailer. That's why you don't have a poster. Is the budget more? I would say the budget is probably more. I mean, with sequels, generally these contracts are done prior. So I would say that Jamie Lee Curtis, when she entered into negotiations with her agent or her manager, entered into negotiations with Halloween 2018, there was, and again, this is not an exact science here. Contracts vary, and this isn't necessarily how it was done, but I could see there's a high probability that she negotiated a 2 or 3 picture deal, potentially. Now, that doesn't mean that how this usually works is that doesn't mean that they are obligated to do 2 or 3 movies with Jamie Lee Curtis. It just means that if we do decide to do 2 or 3 movies, you are contractually obligated to be in these movies. But we could just do 1 and that's it. So, and she's like, okay, you know what I mean? But if we decide to come back and do a sequel, you're contractually obligated to come back and do it. That's usually, but again, that depends. That can depend on the size of the picture, what's at stake. It's not an exact science. But I could see that maybe that might have been something that was implemented. That, hey, here's the budget for 18. Here's what you're going to get. But we're going to sign you to a 2-picture deal or 3-picture deal, and here's what you're going to get if we do the next one. But it all depends on what the 18 film would have done. I mean, that's factored in as well. We don't know if this thing's even going to be a success. This could bomb at the box office or be a moderate subpar success, and we're not making another one. So there's a lot of factors that come into play on that. But is the budget for Halloween Kills more than 18? Likely, yes, it is. How much more? I don't know. 18 was clocked in at, I think, roughly ballpark 10 million. This might be in and around maybe 15 million, maybe. You know, I can guarantee you that it's not less. I can guarantee you that. But production budgets don't include marketing. So when you look at a production, like when they say it cost, you know, $250 million to make The Rise of Skywalker, that includes everything but marketing, essentially. That includes actors' contracts, that includes cast, crew, that includes everything. But it's not part of the marketing. So, yeah, I would say that there is a likelihood that, yeah, this is, it's a sequel. There's more players in this. So obviously there's more people that are being paid, right? You have more people, you have more actors, you're expanding the story. There's more killing going on. It's more violent. You're upping the ante. And naturally, because of the success of the first movie, you will pay, you know, James Jude Courtney, Jamie Lee Curtis, Andy Matichak, Judy Greer will get raises. I mean, that's generally how this works. How much, I don't know. I mean, it's not like the first movie's 10 million and this movie's going to cost 90 million to make. No. It's not going to be that much of a margin, right? But certainly it's more for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah. Billy Van sends in a super chat. Thank you, Billy. Says, very interesting and amazing journey, Dave. Well, thank you so much, Billy. Really appreciate you saying that, man. Like I said, I could have gone on and on, but that is sort of how I went from where I was as a kid into film school and why I left and where I am now. Although something I forgot to mention early on, when we were talking about this, is that ironically, about maybe 7 or 8 years after I left college, so maybe about 2008 or 9, a third year college student from my college was writing their thesis, and they wanted to interview me for part of their thesis. And I thought that was incredibly ironic because I never graduated from the program. I never wrote a thesis. I never graduated from the program he's looking to graduate from, which is why he's writing his third year film thesis. Excuse me. And he had a section on it in voiceover and how that relates to film. He discovered I went to Niagara College, the same program, and wanted to interview me. And I said to him, I will do it, but I just want to let you know that I didn't graduate from the program. I'm a dropout. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, tell me, you know. So I thought that was really kind of funny. You know what I mean? And I wonder, I don't know who his professor was. I don't know if it was, because again, it was close to a decade after I had left. I don't know if it was still the same film professor that I had, but I certainly thought that was kind of funny in a very ironic way. I leave and I'm getting interviewed for it'd be funny to see my name on there. Fuck that Dave McRae, man. There he is. Kind of funny. Let me see. I'll make sure to miss any super chats. I did not, as far as I know. Tabitha Short says, just wanted to say thanks for everything you do, Dave. You're great at what you do. Thanks for keeping me entertained and making me laugh. You're terrific. Tabitha, thank you so much for saying that. I really do appreciate it. You know, as you know, I don't do this for that, but it's just a nice byproduct. Whenever, and any YouTube personality will tell you, if you do this long enough and you have enough of a following, and it's not like my channel's huge or anything, but if you have enough of a following, you do hear people, you know, will reach out to you, you know, and say things like, you know, you get me through some hard times and I was this, that, or, you know, I'm going through a breakup, or my parents are divorcing, or I just lost my job, or whatever the case is. And they say that you really help them through difficult times. And, you know, that's not why I do this. It's not why we YouTube personalities get online and do this. We're generally really passionate about what we're talking about, but it is such a wonderful thing to hear. And it means a lot, you know, because, you know, at the end of the day, I'm on here and just doing my thing, and to know that I can make your day, even if it's just a little bit brighter for an hour and a half or 2 hours, or, you know, whatever the case is, that really means a lot. You know, if you can walk away and feel just a little bit better, about your day, that really means a lot. It really it's humbling. It really is, because everybody's going through something. Everybody's going through something, or everybody has gone through something. We've all had, myself included, we've all had really down moments in our lives, and that it means a lot. I know it means a lot to Tony as well. He said that, people reach out to him and say, I just want to let you know that, your Two Dudes show just means a lot to me, or, the photos you post, it puts a smile on my face, whatever. And he said the same thing. He's like, it really, we don't do it for that. And we're not thinking about it when we're doing our shit. But when people say that, it's like, it means a lot. So Tabitha, thank you. It really does mean a lot. It really does. Super chat from Frank Riker says, Dave, ever see Force 10 from Navarone with Ford and Shaw? I haven't. It's a Ford movie I've got to see. Funny that the Nazi commander in it is also is also the one in Crusades. Michael, is it Byrne? Michael Byrne? Is that how you say his last name? I think it's Byrne. Byrne? Is it really? That's funny. That's funny. No, I haven't. And I'm a big, there's a couple of Harrison Ford movies I haven't seen. Admittedly, I haven't seen The Frisco Kid. I know what you're thinking. Dave, you haven't. I got to see that one. I got to see Force 10 from Navarone. And there's one other Ford one I haven't seen. Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round. It's not a Harrison Ford movie per se. He's got that cameo. It was his first cameo, his first movie where he was the bellboy, right? Paging Mr. Ellis, that 1968, I think, something like that. Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round. I haven't seen that movie. So I've seen that clip of him in it, but I'd like to see the movie just to say I've seen the movie. You know what I mean? So I've got to see that one as well. Let me see here. Edwin A. Sardo says, Dave, your videos have great rewatch value in my opinion. Well, that's cool. Hey, that's cool. That's great that it has great rewatch value. I'm sure not everyone does. Your insight and entertainment are always top notch, man. Well, again, thank you, Edwin. I really appreciate that very much. Tabitha says, I'm so shocked, Dave. You haven't seen every single Harrison Ford has been in. I haven't. No, admittedly, I haven't. There's a few there that have escaped me. I've seen most of them. Like, probably 97% of them, but there's a couple that have escaped me. Machete Slasher says, Dave, you should do a McRae live on your top 5 favorite Michael Myers shots. I think I have. I don't know if I've done a McRae live specifically about that, but haven't I done that? I'll have to go back into my films, into my videos, and see if I have done that, because I'm pretty sure I've done that or some variation of. But if I haven't, that's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea, my man. Not a bad idea. David Smith says, I'll watch his little thing. Haha, I'm sorry, couldn't help myself. I'll watch his little thing. I'll watch it. Did I just say that? I'll watch his little thing and you're making a joke. I didn't even know I said that if I said something like that. That's funny. Ryan O'Neill says, I don't think you have done it. Yeah, I don't know if it's specifically that. Certainly not on McRae Live. I know I haven't done it on McRae Live, but in the past, I think I might have uploaded like my favorite Michael Myers moments or my favorite scenes or something. There might be a variation of what Machete Slasher is talking about. But you could be right. You might be right. Let me see here. Let me go back. Mr. No Name says, hey, Dave, you should do a video on your top 5 favorite cartoons from childhood. That's not a bad, hey, that's a good one. Maybe I'll do that. That's not a bad one. Maybe I will do that. Let me see here. Oliver Mercer says, hey, Dave, out of your whole career, what would be your most proudest moment? Oh, well, I mean, I don't think there's one single moment, but I think obviously anybody would tell you, any actor will tell you, whether you're a voice actor or an on-camera actor or a bit actor or a background actor, whatever it is, or a filmmaker. I mean, when you get to work on something that is of higher profile, that is always something that is exciting and that you look at as a sort of a benchmark of your success, and that maybe your career has been taken to the next level or something to that effect, right? I know for me, when I started to do, like when I did, a TV spot, like I said, for Dave Chappelle's Block Party, and then I did a TV spot for Grindhouse, and then I moved into doing, network promos. I remember I did a promo for was it NBC? I did a promo for, I think it was NBC, back in 2011. I did a promo for, do you remember that I posted it to my Instagram, that television show, The Event? Do you remember that? I think it only lasted like one season or something like that. But there was a television show about 10 or 11 years ago called The Event. And I did a promo for that show. And the promo ran on NBC, if I'm not, it would have. It would have ran on NBC. I have that promo. That was like, there's moments like that where you're like, wow, I'm really doing this, or, when I did the, trailer for It or Inside Out, Big Hero 6, Lego Batman, Peter Rabbit, whenever I'm doing higher profile stuff, I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that. But at the same time, there's little things that I'm proud of as, too. Commercials that maybe you guys don't hear. Commercials that maybe only play here in Canada. Or sometimes there are commercials that go across borders. Like a couple years ago, I was doing all of these Slim Jim ads. So I wasn't Macho Man, but they were airing, I don't think they were Super Bowl ads, but they were airing in and around the Super Bowl. I did a bunch of Slim Jim ads, and I believe the tagline was, what was it? I think it was snap into bold flavored protein, snap into a Slim Jim. And I was like, snap into bold flavored protein, snap into a Slim Jim. It was something like that. And I was doing like this, that kind of voice. Snap into bold flavored protein, snap into a Slim Jim. And that was a campaign that ran for, I think it ran for a couple of months or a year or something like that. And that was airing in the States as well. So sometimes it's those things I'm proud of as well. Like, it's not just Hollywood movie trailer shit that I've done that I'm proud of. Sometimes it's the little things, or sometimes it's, you're doing something that is just it's a local commercial, but in order to bring it from, sometimes the process is a strain, and sometimes you have to be there for a while because the director is dealing with the marketing company who's dealing with the product. There's all sorts of things, and you're trying to figure out how to say something and word something, and you're trying to figure out how to fit a 33-second script into 30 seconds or 28 seconds because you got to leave room for the little musical thing at the very end. And sometimes when you complete that, you finish that, you nail that, even though it's a local ad that maybe is only going to play here in Toronto, you feel a real sense of accomplishment, right? A real sense of wow, I'm really proud of that, because, you did it, you completed it. It's the creative process that makes you feel that way, right? You really dive into the creative process that makes you really feel that way, even though it's not an ad that you're going to hear. It's only an ad, and I can't say it's only an ad playing in Toronto. I mean, there's 8 million people in this area, but I mean, that kind of thing is always cool too. The creative process and the problem solving and figuring out how to, make things work. And that's always great too. I love that kind of thing. But certainly when it comes to projects, I'm my most proudest when when I always get to play in a very large sandbox. Or like I said, I think some of my proudest moments too are my 4 VAA nominations. I mean, that's surreal. Like I said, to be at Warner Brothers walking red carpets with Sigourney Weaver, Rosario Dawson, William Shatner, I mean, it's strange. Anybody who's ever, for those of you that are watching who work in the entertainment industry at a certain level, and you have the opportunity to go to things like that, whether because of a byproduct of what you do, you're there because your job requires you to be there, and whatever, or you're directly involved, like you've been nominated, or you're part of a group that's been nominated, or whatever the case is. I mean, maybe if you're like Harrison Ford and you've walked like 5,000 red carpets in your life, maybe. But I haven't walked 5,000 red carpets in my life. And, you know, so to go to something like that, it's a very surreal experience. I mean, it really is. And I don't take it for granted, you know, and I hope I'll get to do it again, you know? So those things I'm very proud of. Very, 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 very proud of. Let's see. Duke Fleet says, Dave, if you could summarize in one point, if I could summarize in one point, you mean like in one sentence maybe, what you don't like in the Star Wars prequels, what would you choose? I would say one thing I don't like about the Star Wars prequels is that it feels too perfect in terms of the CGI. It's too glitzy. It's too shiny. It's too synthetic. It doesn't have that organic, real world lived in feel. It's too green screened most of the time. And therefore, because of that, it feels like I'm watching an animated movie a lot. You know what I mean? It feels like that. Compare the prequels with something like Alita Battle Angel. You know, a lot of Alita Battle Angel, there's thousands of visual effects in Alita Battle Angel, but it still feels real world lived in. It still feels gritty and grimy and real world. I don't feel that with the prequels. I feel like I'm watching an anime. I know I'm going on and that's not a one sentence thing there, but I'm making this one point. That's one thing that I don't like about the prequels. It doesn't feel gritty. It feels too shiny and perfect, you know. And ironically, that's part of a big thing that I think is wrong with it. All right, we'll go for a few more minutes here. Just make sure I didn't miss any super chats. I don't think I did. Oh, wait. Chris Hames sends a super chat. Chris Hames, my man, going hard into the paint. Let me go back here. Chris Hames, where are you? Chris Hames sending a super chat. There he is. Chris Hames says, he just says, thanks for the content, man. It's greatly appreciated. Keep up the excellent work. Well, thank you, Chris. Really appreciate you supporting the channel like that and sending that in. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's see here. What's going on? Darren Sand says Slim Jim is like a sausage. Oh, yes, it is. It's like a very thin pepperoni stick or like sausage stick or whatever. Yeah, that's right. I guess they don't have Slim Jims over in the UK. Or maybe you do. You have something like it, but it's not called Slim Jim. I don't know. Oh, I love this. It's a tiny sausage. Oh, come on. You guys know. There you go, folks. People are just, get your minds out of the gutter, ladies and gentlemen. Troy Stacha says, Dave, have you ever done any voice acting for anime? If not, is that something you'd be interested in getting into? Number one, no, I've never done any voice acting for anime. And number two, I would love to do voice acting for anime because I mean, it's animation. And I haven't done a lot of animation, but I have done some animation and I love the experience. I've worked with Susan Hart and Deborah Toffin, who are Emmy nominated and Emmy award winning animation casting directors here in Toronto. Susan, I've only worked with Deborah once and she was terrific. And she's worked with, A-list actors. I've worked with Susan Hart on a number of occasions, and I adore Susan Hart. I haven't worked with her in a little bit. Susan, if you're watching, she's not watching, but if she ever does see this, Susan, I love you. You are terrific. You are amazing. I love working with you, and I really hope we can work again in the near future. I just adore her. She's just so fun. And so, yeah, I have done some animation, but I've never done anime. I would totally be down for doing it. Anime is huge. I'd be anybody. Hey, if anybody is watching, wants to cast me in an animated, I'm down, man. I'm down. Just let me know. Oh, it'd be great. I'd love to do that. Let me see here. Mr. No Name says Danny would like. Oh yeah, Danny, would you like? That's right. Tom Green. Hey, Tom Green. There's an Ottawa guy. Tom Green grew up in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. He's a Canadian from Ottawa. I haven't met Tom Green, but my dad, Tom Green, grew up in Ottawa, and in the early to mid 90s, the Tom Green Show started on local cable access Rogers Communication Television in Ottawa. It was a local for free. He was doing it for free. That was the original Tom Green Show. And my dad was on his show in the early 90s. I remember that. I remember my dad went on his show in the early 90s. That's so funny. Yeah, Tom Green's certainly come a long way. Good old Tom Green. All right, 2 more minutes, and then we will call it a day, ladies and germs. 2 more minutes, and then we will call it a day. Let me see here. What do we got going on? Trying to get somebody I haven't seen before, or let's see, I'm just scrolling back. Mr. Genre says, don't forget the royalty payments for Danielle Harris due to Jamie Lloyd being disowned by her on-screen mom. Yeah, that's true. There are... That's something I should do too. Maybe that's a topic I'll do soon, talking about actors' contracts, royalties thing. I'd have to brush up a bit on how it, because it's not an exact science. There's a lot of variables at play when it comes to actors' contracts, but I do have some experience with that, albeit on the voiceover side of things. But there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of parallels in the contracts I've signed in terms of, NDAs and, being paid for something and then restructuring the product, running the ad again, but I get paid for it again. I would have to just brush up a little bit to see what, I'll do a bit of reading just to make sure I'm getting the ballpark right in terms of on-camera actors' contracts. But certainly, like I said, I've dealt with a lot of that in my life, and that might be an interesting topic for a show. Talking about kind of how it works. And the guilds too. I mean, there's SAG-AFTRA, there's IATSE, which is the union that represents crew and stage members and things like that. There's the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild. There's so much of the business side of movies in Hollywood. And admittedly, I don't know it all, but certainly those were things that when I was in film school, we were learning about. Of course, back then it was SAG and AFTRA. They were 2 separate unions. Now they've merged into one. And of course, the union here in Canada is ACTRA, and there's a lot of it. It's very fascinating. It's very fascinating, and of course, there's as well. It's interesting. That would be a good topic for a show, but I'd have to make sure that I brush up a little bit on certain things, make sure that it is what I remember. Cause like I said, I mean, these things are constantly evolving and changing, but it would be a cool topic though. I think you guys are still talking about Slim Jim. This is so great. This is so great. Did anybody ever see the ad that I did for Slim Jim? I think there were about 4 or 5 of them. One was, there was one where there were these 2 paramedics who were giving the Heimlich maneuver to somebody, and the paramedics looked kind of disinterested, and one was chewing on a Slim Jim, and it's such silly. They're such silly ads. They're very satirical, very like silly and dumb. That was one I did, and then of course at the end of that, you hear me pop in and go, snap into bold flavored protein, snap into a Slim Jim, and then the other one was, I think there was a bank robber there was a bank that was under siege or something, and they were all tied up and. Yeah, they're probably on YouTube. If you just YouTube Dave McRae Slim Jim, that's right. Tabitha says you posted. I thought I did. They were fun to do. I recorded those spots in a studio here in Toronto, not from home, but downtown Toronto. And I think the studio we were doing either a Source Connect or through ISDN, and it was a studio in Chicago, actually. I think they were in Chicago. I don't think they were in New York or LA. I think they were in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. But that was fun. That was fun because the spots are so silly. I mean, my part is relatively small to the vast majority of the commercial, but they're such silly spots. You know what I mean? They're just so silly. I just loved watching them and just playing around. All right, folks, listen, that is going to do it for me here on episode 61 of McRae Live. I want to thank everybody who tuned into this show. I know it's not, a movie-related show per se, but I'm always trying to think of fun and interesting and different topics, to keep the ball rolling. I obviously don't want to talk about the same thing all the time, and I thought today's topic was different, and it gives you a little bit of insight into my journey at the very least from my childhood to where I am now. Like I said, there's so many things I didn't touch on that I could have, but for the sake of time, I wanted to kind of give you guys the gist of that. Thank you to my moderators, Tabitha Short, Frank Riker, Jason Nike, and Darren Sands, of course, for keeping the chat room flowing. You guys are amazing. I really appreciate what you guys do. And thank you to the super chats that came in as well, and to everybody who asked questions, and really appreciate you guys tuning in. I mean, if you guys didn't tune in, I wouldn't be here. Although I'd probably still be talking somewhere. Somewhere I'd be talking. So that is going to do it for me. I will be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time for episode 62 of McRae Live. What will I be talking about tomorrow? I don't know. You'll have to wait and see. So that is going to do it for me. In the meantime and in between time, I will talk to you guys soon. Alrighty. Cheers.